But now, look at verse 10. David says, I'm going to focus on God's work. I'm going to focus on what God does. I've seen God's character and I've seen mine. I'm sorry about mine and I rejoice in His. But I'm going to look at God's work. And verse 10 says this, God is washing our hearts. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Renew a steadfast spirit within me. Not one that says one day, okay, I'll obey you, God. And the next day I won't obey you, God. He said, I want a steadfast spirit. I want one that doesn't turn. He says, I want one that is stuck to the Lord. And God is washing our hearts. A couple of my favorite verses, Hebrews 9:14. How much more shall the blood of Christ through the eternal Spirit purge your conscience? The inner being of our conscience that records what we do. He will purge our conscience from the works that lead to death, that we might serve God. Hebrews 10:22 says, we can draw near to God unashamed, with no fear, having our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience, our bodies washed with pure water. God is washing our hearts. Secondly, in verse 11, God is restoring our walk in the Spirit. It says, don't cast me away from thy presence. Don't take your Holy Spirit from me. He was so aware that the sweet influence of the Holy Spirit that came upon him, that filled his heart with joy, with songs, with peace, that made him a blessing, had been pulled back. So David says, I want you to renew my heart by washing it, verse 10. I want you to restore my walk by giving me your Spirit back in verse 11. Verse 12, he says, I want you to bring back the fruit of the Spirit in my life. He says, restore to me the joy of my salvation. Sustain me with a willing spirit. Remember, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy. Fruit of the Spirit, joy. It's not something that we get by moving. It's not something we get by buying something. It's not something we get by accomplishing something. It's an internal fruit born by the Spirit of God that grows inside of us. He says, bring back the fruitfulness of your Spirit in my life. I'm going to focus on your work. I want you to wash my heart. I want you to restore my walking in the power of your Spirit. I want you to renew His fruit growing in me. Verse 13, he concludes this section focusing on God's work. He says, I want you, O God, to help me have further ministry. You know, sometimes when we hit the bottom, when we're into sin, we just think it's all over. Nothing. I can't do anything. I'm useless. Look what he says in verse 13. When I let you, God, do all this, when I let you wash my heart, when I let you restore my walk in the Spirit, when I let you renew His bringing forth fruit in my life, you prepare me for further ministry. Then, verse 13 says, I'll teach transgressors thy ways, and sinners will be converted to thee. Wow. David said, I'm going to come back. I'm going to serve you. Now, he didn't go back while he was still in sin. There was quite a long period of time. God had worked through the process and had utterly cleansed him, filled him back with joy.